What's up, party people? You have Survivor Teek here. I know it's a little bit late, but after popular demand, people have been asking me for a Survivor Season 41 retrospective, or at least a finale analysis. So that's what I'm here to do. It's super cold here in the Calgary winter. It's over -20. So you start to see my beard freezing up. That's probably why, but I'm out here in my hot tub enjoying a nice rolling rock from St. Louis, Missouri, and yeah, having a good time. So let's get down to it. I know you don't want to hear about my day. You want to talk about Survivor. So in the final five, what ended up happening was you started off with this weird twist where it said you'll get an advantage in the puzzle. And so Ricard and Xander are the ones who figure it out right away. But somehow Erika gets it. I'll get into Erika in a bit. As we all know, Erika was anointed the winner, and I was seen to be an absolute epic failure. But despite that, it was pretty shocking to see Erika get it. Ricard, he was doing all the puzzle in his head and he figured it out right away, and Xander was right after him, and it was really between those two to win the challenges. And Erika got this advantage where she was able to basically like skip parts of the puzzle and get steps on the ladder in advance, and then because of that she won. Like, I think Ricard was pretty close, and Ricard needed that win in the final five to be able to guarantee himself a spot in the final four. But Erika getting that was pretty game-changing. So you end up in this situation where the two names being thrown out are Deshawn and Ricard. Ricard's kind of the favorite at this point. He's a challenge beast. He ousted Shan. He survived that crazy tribe with Brad and JD and Jeannie and Sarah. And so he had the best storyline out of anybody left in the game. And so he and Xander shared this bit of a friendship. Ricard disclosed to him that, you know, he's out here and he's missing the birth of his next child, and that's his big sacrifice, and Xander feels like, you know, this is a big deal. I will get to Xander in a bit, but the reason why I think Ricard was talking to Xander was because Xander has an idol. Everyone knows Xander had an idol, and Ricard's only real way to save himself at the end, because he knew Deshawn, Erika, and Heather all voting against him, was if Xander played that damn idol on him. And this is where I think Ricard's game fell apart. I think Ricard still had moves to play. And you see this a little bit in Cook Islands. So this is a while back where Yule won that season. You might remember him from Winners at War. But Adam basically said, you better vote out Jonathan Penner before me. Give me that extra week. And then if you do, then I guarantee you I'll go to the jury and I'll say, Yule's the man. And in fact, Yule won the game by one vote, and Adam could have been that one vote that could have gone to Ozzy instead, and Yule could have lost the game. And as we all know, Xander lost the game. But Xander should have used that idol, and I know it sounds ridiculous because Ricard was Xander's biggest competition, but he had to make a move, and I think he would have justified the move if Ricard gave him more. If Ricard said specifically, if you just save me this one round, I don't even care if I go out in the final four, I will vote for you at the end, and I will advocate for you. Ricard had to have a harder push to Xander, and he didn't do that. Now, people have to start using their jury votes as ultimatums. It's kind of seen as a taboo in Survivor, but I don't know why it is. It happens a lot more frequently in Big Brother, actually, when people kind of use their jury votes as a bargaining chip. That was Ricard's last bargaining chip, and it really should have been effective. Xander ended up being a 0-vote finalist, so I think he could have played a little harder at the end, but he was kind of resentant to the fact. And I think he really had to pump up Xander's gears and say, look, Erika is better than you. You need to make more moves, and you need to use this idol. So as much as Ricard kind of said on his way out, I'm a champion, I'm one of the best players to ever play the game, I think he made a flaw there at the end. So Ricard's gone, final four, and this is where it's interesting because you know there's going to be a fire-making challenge. You have this kind of balancing kind of block challenge where Xander ends up winning the final immunity, which was compelling because probably Xander at this point seemed like the biggest threat. So now you're left with Xander, Deshawn, Erika, and Heather as the final four. And probably Xander should have recognized that Erika and Deshawn were probably the two biggest threats, and Heather was the clear person to bring to the final three. Inexplicably, he doesn't bring her. And it still doesn't make a ton of sense, his rationale behind it. A lot of it was he thought Erika was a big contender. He didn't want Erika to have an extra opportunity to show the jury something. But like, it almost shows better that he brought her at the end, because then Erika was able to bring this whole kind of social narrative at the end of the game. So Xander made a terrible decision at this point of the game. In fact, I think this was one of the reasons why he lost the game. He should have brought Heather. Heather was the clear person who didn't really have much agency in the game, and her one big move was to try to oust the Seer, that one tribal council, which blew up in her face. And so, like, he should have brought her, let Erika and Deshawn go into it, and let them make fire. Or what's more, which Xander did mention, was do like the Chris Underwood move. And this happened in Edge of Extinction. When Chris knew that Rick was the biggest threat, he won immunity, and he's like, I'm going to fire with Rick Devens. And then beat Rick Devens in fire. Chris knew if he had lost that, Rick wins. If I win this, I win. Because the other two in that situation, Gavin and Julie, were basically non-entities. And that is how Xander should have viewed it. He should have viewed it as him and Erika are the two main entities. It doesn't matter. I know this is the part of the game. I know he wins immunity. But he needed to go in a fire with Erika and win. Ironically, had Heather or Deshawn win that challenge, they likely would have put Erika and Xander into that, and Xander would have won. So it's really funny how actually Xander winning that immunity challenge could have lost him the game. Really. So the fire challenge happens. It's Deshawn and Heather. Heather looks great. She's actually doing pretty well. And it looks like she's gonna win there for a second, but Deshawn's fire ends up breaking it. He makes it to the final three, and Heather leaves. Heather's game, we didn't see a lot of it. I think the Blue Tribe suffered a lot overall because we didn't see them in the previous immunity challenges, so we didn't really get a sense of how competitive they were and how strategic they were. And I think Heather's game was too tied to Erika. And we'll get to Erika in a second, but like Heather and Erika, Heather needs to get rid of Erika, maybe make some more separate bonds, really try to build bonds with Danny and Deshawn and show that she had a lot more agency in the game. It didn't help that she was physically weaker, but it didn't seem like the jury was too focused on physical prowess in any event. I think if Heather had won that challenge, who knows? She could have gotten a couple votes there at the end. But I just think Heather's game wasn't aggressive enough or assertive enough. It would have been interesting if she did kind of make a move on Sydney. I know she had those dreams against Sydney at the start, and just have a bit more of a resume. So she's gone. Final three is Deshawn, Xander, and Erika. It seems pretty even, but you kind of start to hear the jury sentiments, and then you start to see the dominoes fall for Xander, who personally was my favorite going into the finals. But you started to see how the votes played out. So the final vote was 8-1-0. Danny gave Deshawn a vote, and then the other 8 gave Erika the vote. Xander was 0 votes. They revealed it right away. Xander and Deshawn looked really upset at the reunion. It was pretty funny. But I think Xander's main issue was the idol. He had this idol, and he said he would play it on his allies, and he never did, and he held it to the end, and he never used it at the end. And I think that really showed. Like, this idol was useless. He was pretty selfish about it. It seemed to be like a lot more of a relational season. That's how the jury looked at it. They looked at how are people treating the others, how are people interacting with others, and in a lot of ways that's how Xander and Deshawn both lost. But in Xander's case, I think he should have used it on Tiffany. He should have used it on Evie, or he should have used it on Ricard. Those are the 3 votes that could have gone his way. Here are 3 people that knew him and were friends and were allies in the game with him, but they didn't even vote for him. And I think a big part of it was to do with the idol. Wasting it at the end was a bad move. He should have played it. And then he kind of got to this point where he played a lone wolf strategy, and he kind of fell outside of the relations. One of the big storylines was really the fall of the Black Alliance, the Shan, Liana, Danny, and Deshawn Alliance. And so Xander just wasn't really part of that. At least Erika was kind of part of it. She was part of the strategy with Ricard. Xander was kind of just, I am a threat, I have my shields. It was a pretty basic strategy. And he made that blunder near the end. He made some blunders in how he's talking to the jury, how he was kind of telling the jury that Heather's not a goat and Erika is. And he was saying some weird things, and it didn't help that he had this poor relationship with Liana. I was still surprised, but you started to see how he lost the game. Deshawn's big flaw was turning on that alliance. It made no sense for Deshawn and Danny to turn on Shan and Liana. They should have still stayed loyal. It was a tumultuous alliance, but they broke up at the exact wrong time when the other numbers turned and swept them under. I think him breaking that allegiance with Shan was really it for him. And he seemed to be a bit of an emotional player, a bit of a tantrum player. I think he had too many cooks in the too many ovens in the kitchen. What's the phrase? There's too much going on in his game. Here he was trying to throw a challenge for Erika, but then Erika has this alliance. he was kind of throwing everybody's name under the bus, everybody else. When you hit Ponderosa and the jury, everyone exchanges notes, and they probably saw that Deshawn was playing a very messy game. And they didn't like how he kind of was a little bit emotional, and people kind of saw him a little bit as hypocritical. So I almost feel like Erika won the game by default. And by reading, like, post-press interviews about Erika talks a lot about how she was really disappointed that she wasn't able to play a strong game. She even had, like, a meltdown in pre-merge because she's like, how do I make a resume and show that I'm a strategic player when I'm not going to tribal council? So, like, Nasir's, like, challenge prowess really kind of hurt her game, but she made big moves. And I don't think that the show did a great job in showcasing what it was. Like, her edit was so underrated, like, it was criminally underrated, and that's a big issue with Erika's game. Like, I'm happy. She's Canadian, she comes from an immigrant family, like, Western grad, MIT, like, let's go, Erika. Like, let's go. Like, I'm a fan of Erika. But, like, her big moves, one was her relationship with Heather, which they never showed. And, like, this is part of the reason why the edit didn't make any sense. She had this, like, huge bond with Heather that really helped her through the game. And, like, to have those duos where you're the stronger one and the other person's kind of passive and you can kind of navigate yourself to the end, and you know that even if you make it to the end, you beat them. I think like Tyson and Jervis and Blood versus Water. It's one of those duos where even if Heather beat Deshawn in the fire, Erika still would have won for sure. So it was really odd they didn't show that relationship. The other real pivotal move that I think was her game-winning move was it was when it was final 10 and they split them into 2 tribes of 5, and then Erika won immunity, and then it was Erika, Shan, Ricard, Heather, and Nasir. And then the 3 of them, Nasir, Ricard, and Shan, were all targeting Heather to kind of weaken Erika. And Erika was able to shift it, which I think was a total game flaw on all of them, Ricard, Shan, and Nasir. And like this is almost like Ricard's like game-ending move as well. They turned on Nasir, which didn't make a lot of sense in retrospect, because then they let Erika and Heather really start to build, the whole machine to kind of help A, get rid of Shan, and then B, slowly kind of decimate the remainders of that alliance, Liana, Danny, Deshawn, and then Ricard himself. And so, like, that unraveling was all Erika's doing in this pivotal moment when it was 5, and she was able to use Nasir's idol, use Nasir's overconfidence. This is a great time to get rid of Nasir, and that's a really underrated move by Erika that I think was the game-winning move for her, because that really set her up in this position where she was kind of quietly calling the shots. She was the quote-unquote strategic head, probably with Ricard of the Counter Alliance. As sure as heck wasn't Heather or Xander. And so Erika was able to kind of navigate that, and I think Ricard probably advocated for her at the end. I think they drew a lot of respect for Ricard. You probably just asked Ricard, hey, who is more strategic, Erika or Xander? And Ricard would be probably pissed because of Xander's move not to use the idol when he could have saved him. So he's probably like, well, Erika was calling the shots because Xander's just a puppet. And so Erika did win in the game. She was nice, she was pleasant. A lot of people say her win is lucky. Yeah, there's a lot of luck. Like Deshawn had that prisoner's dilemma luck. Like Xander kind of had a bit of luck too. He messed up not finding that advantage that Jeff Probst showed when he was on the sit-out bench. Him himself like surviving because of like Tiffany's weird vote at the start and getting rid of Vochi instead of Xander was a little bit of luck, you can say. So I'm fine with luck being a component of this game. It was a faster paced game. There were more like moves and idols totally being misplayed left and right. But Erika wins the game. Bit of a surprise to see Shan, Liana vote for her instead of Deshawn, but I guess they were set. And to see Tiff and Evie vote for her instead of Xander, where they didn't really even know Erika that well. So I think there are a lot of social connections they didn't really show. So that goes back to the editing, the contender analysis. I was very wrong. I never really pointed to Erika the entire season. I had her number 5 at the start. In my first few weeks, I had her pretty high. But they just never really had a focus on her. She had a very under-the-radar edit, which there's a lot of criticism when it comes to Survivor and how they edit female winners, especially female people of color winners. Like, I think Vesepia was one. I think there was one other that my mind's just blanking on it. But yeah, so it was a bit of an odd win. I think Erika's going to go down in the history books as a bit of an odd winner. Somebody that wasn't really edited well. It was a 26-day season. I'm not sure if they'll put the full asterisk, but it was 20 people. Like, it was a proper Jeff Probst season. Like, I'll put it in the books as a full victory. I think Xander and Deshawn had too many flaws in their game. At the end, it's a game where you have to connect with the jury. And we're not the jury. I know it looked like Xander. I liked Xander's big moves. We got to understand strategic analysis. I talked about it in my contender analysis week after week. So I know that I like Xander's strategic game. And had I just watched what I watched as a TV product, I would have voted for Xander to win at the end. I really would have. But we weren't there, and a lot of what they think in jury is, what is your personal relationship with me? Did you betray the alliance? Hashtag Deshawn. Did you betray me by not using your idol, which was Xander's big mistake? And so those are the things that they're thinking about, whereas Erika kind of played a nice, always under the radar game. You heard people like Danny and Chad say, that was the game that I wanted to play. And so I think Eric actually has like good replayability value too. These under the radar type winners. Someone like Michelle last season in Winners at War that could actually do a lot of damage in a future season. I actually think Erika is probably a middle ranked, maybe middle to low ranked winner. She just didn't have enough on her resume, but I think she has good winnability value. So overall, it was an okay season. I wouldn't put this season as like a top tier season at all. The ending was just kind of weird. There's too many twists this season, I think. Too many advantages. Apparently season 42 is going to be more of the same. I hear that they're still going to have that same kind of like broccoli and astroturf kind of advantage where it's going to be a 3 shared idol. So we'll see if things play out a little bit differently. I think it's going to be like 41 times 2. Just different players, but similar kind of blueprint. I'm excited for season 42. I think it was a good character season. We lost a lot of good personalities early. Like, we lost Brad, we lost JD, Mochi seemed entertaining. I liked Sarah too. Like, so a lot of people earlier on. Sydney should have made it further as well. And so it's unfortunate with the boot order. I think we kind of ended up with some like boring players at the end. That's how Survivor goes. The editing was a bit of a off-put, but I've shifted my analysis for next season. So we'll see how next season goes. I might do it a little bit differently. I might try to do short, kind of 1-minute YouTube shorts as reactions and try to hit 2 or 3 of the high-level points, and then go to the deeper analysis afterwards. So I hope you join me for season 42. I'm always back. Survivor Teek. Here are my hot tub. I'm burning up, so I'm having a good time, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.